Bom dia a todos. Eu gostaria de agradecer a presença de todos aqui, o interesse em participar de mais esse webinar. Eu gostaria de agradecer muito ao senhor Nelson Barbosa, diretor de planejamento do BNDES, e gostaria também de agradecer ao senhor Isaac Sutton, que é da Boutique de Investimentos BH26, e que também é associado à Câmara. Obrigado a todos. Eu vou passar a palavra ao Nelson e depois ao senhor Isaac.
Bom dia a todos, bom dia, Márcio, bom dia, Isaac. Obrigado pela oportunidade de estar aqui. Primeiro, eu queria fazer uma pergunta, né? Eu estou com dúvida para essa seminário em inglês ou em português?
Vai ser em português mesmo.
Ah, tá bom. Não, porque a gente acabou fazendo a apresentação em inglês, eu achei que seria em inglês, mas tudo bem. Em inglês? Ah, então tá aqui. Okay, so again, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to be here and to present what we have been doing at the BNDES. I will project a brief presentation to guide my talk. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, just for people who are not familiar with what BNDES is a development bank, 100% owned by the Brazilian federal government. Within the federal government, we are subordinated to the Ministry of Development, Industry and Foreign Trade, which is headed by Vice President Geraldo Alckmin. This BNDES system has two subsidiaries. One is the BNDES PAR, which is our investment and participations company. And we have Finame, which concentrates our financing of capital goods. Both of them are two paper companies to segregate in the balance the operations that they do. The BNDES was created in 1952. It's 71 years old. It was created as part of a suggestion by a U.S.-Brazil commission in the efforts after the World War II to foster development in the Third World. You had the Marshall Plan to Europe, and you have this initiative for development in South America. It's counted initially with a loan from the U.S., and then it evolved in many ways. It has been the bank to finance industrialization, the bank to finance infrastructure. It acts as the Brazilian Exim Bank informally. It has coordinated also more recently privatizations, concessions, and PPPs. And it has been growing in importance to finance small and medium enterprises and credit cooperatives, especially for the agro sector. So it's a long history, and throughout this history, BNDES has renewed itself many ways and many times. We are now in a phase like that. We have to renew BNDES for the new challenges the Brazilian economy face and the new demands that the market has to the government and to long-term finance. This is the size of the BNDES, just to give you an idea in terms of GDP. So BNDES was usually between 8 and 9. Then came the 2008 crisis. BNDES acted as a lender to the non-financial sector with loans from the Treasury. It peaked at 16%, and then it has been gradually falling, and now it seems to stabilize between 7 and 8. So this year is probably going to close at 7% of GDP and maintaining the historical average between 7 and 8% of GDP. Just to give you an idea, the total credit operations in Brazil right now, I think, is something around 50% of the GDP. So BNDES is 12% of the total credit in the economy. In terms of, this is the stock, this is the balance sheet. This is the stock, the balance sheet. Now, in terms of the flow, the credit that BNDES supplies to the economy. So the credit flows have been falling. It was 2.3% of GDP in 2015, then came the crisis. It reached the record low value here during COVID. And now it has been recovering, started the last year of the previous presidential mandate during the Bolsonaro administration, continues during this mandate. And these are the scenarios that we work with. One is keeping the size of the bank as it is this year, 1.1% of GDP. This is a gradual increase, continuing what the growth of 2023, and this is the ambitious scenario that goes to the historical average of BNDES, which is 2% of GDP. To do this expansion, we have capital. BNDES Basel Index right now is between 33 and 34% of GDP. The question is funding at competitive rates. If we have funding at competitive rates, we are sure there's going to be demand for long-term investment in Brazil. So we work with an intermediate scenario between this and this. In terms of value, this year BNDES the total value of credit operation will reach 120 billion reais. This is in nominal terms, as I said, 119 or around 120, and these are the scenarios in nominal terms in Brazilian currency. This is the lowest one. This is the conservative gradual one. This is the ambitious ones for next year. BNDES works together with many multilateral financial institutions from many countries. Works with the Inter-American Development Bank, with KfW, with the Chinese banks, NDB, other banks or development institutions from emerging and developed countries. It does many operations with these partners, most of them co-financing. BNDES enters as a joint lender or a joint shareholder. It does some strategic investments in projects for development, usually associated with exports. And it does infrastructure projects using concessional loans or blended finance with many international partners. This year, we already lent through capital or credit markets a total of $15.5 billion. Most of it goes to infrastructure, water, sanitation, mostly this year. Part of that goes to industry, a lot of financing for Brazil, the Brazilian exports of aircraft, the Embraer exports, trades and services, and agriculture. Agriculture and industry are almost the same. And this has been growing a lot because agriculture, the agro sector as a whole, has been booming in Brazil in the last decade. 6.2 goes to small and medium enterprises and credit cooperatives, and 9.3 goes to medium and large firms. What to consider here is a firm that has a annual revenue from 300 million reais and higher. Talking a little bit about the Brazilian economy, this year started with a very expectation for growth. Given that the economy showed positive GDP, very positive GDP numbers in the first half of the year, the expectation now is that the economy will grow 2.8 this year. For next year, the expectation is that this is going to fall to something between 1.5 and 2%. The trade balance is booming. Brazil is having its record trade surplus this year, pulled by commodities, mostly oil and soybeans, and also a little bit of iron ore, but mostly agriculture and oil. Inflation is going down. It's going to be expected to reach 4.5 this year. The exchange rate is expected to end this year around 5, and our base interest rate, the Selic rate, is expected to fall to 11.75 by December and continue to fall in the beginning of next year. Markets expect our base rate to reach an interval between 9 and 10% by the second quarter of 2024. Going back to the BNDES is strongly involved in all the government initiatives. And right now, the federal government initiatives are divided in 3 main plans or actions, if you will. One is the new Growth Acceleration Program. It has to do mostly with infrastructure and is headed by the Chief of Staff of President Lula, Minister Rui Costa. BNDES participates a lot in that, in selecting the projects, financing the projects, structuring the projects. You have the Plus Industry, or the new industrialization of Brazil, headed by Vice President Minister Geraldo Alckmin. which is aimed at mostly innovation, exports, and product diversification. And you have the Ecological Transformation Program, headed by Minister of Finance, Fernando Haddad, which is focused on mostly on finance and developing new sources of energy, new urban development, and energy efficiency as well. And part in both of them, recovery of Brazilian forests, because most of the emissions in Brazil comes from the use of land. So for Brazil, the main way to reduce emissions is to recover the forest, especially in the Amazon. BNDES finances is a bank that does a lot of things. It does financing credit through credit and through credit markets. BNDES, I would say, is the largest source of long-term financing in Brazilian currency in the world. If you want a credit in Brazilian reais with a maturity longer than 10 years, BNDES is going to be part of the game. If it's longer than 20, BNDES is surely going to be part of the game. BNDES also invests in equities and private equity funds. It's a shareholder in some companies and together with other investors, including private investors. BNDES is a service company. It provides services, consultancy and structuring services especially for governments, municipal and regional and state governments in Brazil, for them to design investment projects. BNDES manages and offers guarantees. We manage a large guarantee fund from the federal government. It's called the FGI, mostly aimed to small and medium enterprises. This was very important during COVID. It's what supported the credit during the hard times of the pandemic. And we also give grants with our money and together with other third parties' money. So we have our budget, which is around 500 million for the next 3 years, support for 500 million reais to support many projects, social, cultural. And we also manage the Amazon Fund, which is a fund that's supplied mostly by donations from abroad, and BNDES is the ones that manage this fund. In terms of services, and credit goes to almost all sectors. From BNDES's history, its focus is a lot on machinery, equipment, agricultural products, and infrastructure, but there's no strict limit. We can diversify. As I said, we do services, coordination of emissions, project structuring, we do grants, we participate as a shareholder, and we do guarantees. In our service project factor, what we call the project factory at BNDES, we have already auctioned 50 projects since 2019, with a total value of 323 billion reais in investments or CAPEX or OPEX. We now have 133 projects in construction, with an estimated investment of CAPEX and OPEX of 273 billion reais. A lot of it is going to green infrastructure, parks and forests. And forests is the main challenge, how to design a sustainable use of forests, recovering degraded areas and keeping the forests that are already there. Highways and ports is mostly concessions. Social infrastructure in health, education, security, these are PPPs of schools, hospitals, and some prisons. This is actually was more important in the past. Now it's going down. Most of it's done through the market, but we still have some projects in electricity and natural gas. Has to do with some privatizations that already happened, and generated distribution of electricity, mostly solar panels by small producers. A lot of projects in water and sanitation and urban mobility. And we do a lot of real estate projects, mostly using assets from the federal government, unused assets from the federal government or from state and municipal government. Some properties are either abandoned or not properly used, and we devise a new way or better way to use that. The one recent case was here in Rio. There was a very high value terrain of the Federal University of Rio in the south zone of Rio, for those who know, close to Copacabana, which has not been used for 30 years. And we structured a project. There will be a theater there. And in exchange for that, the university is going to have some new buildings for students, for housing, and for other activities. We foster sustainable development. We have a lot of projects for renewable energy, as I said, sanitation, corporate and social investments, and we are working to have more diversity criteria or conditions attached to that, recovery of forests, especially in the Amazon, and a lot of urban development. Just to conclude, one of the main initiatives this year is what we call the New Climate Fund. It's a fund that was created by President Lula in his second term, 2009. It's a government fund that receives part of the oil rent of the Brazilian government and directs that to green infrastructure. And this year, the Ministry of Finance issued sustainable bonds. This has forecasting because it was done before 2 weeks ago, but this already happened. The Brazilian Treasury issued $2 billion, and most of this money is going to the climate fund to finance green infrastructure next year. And the BNDES is the institution that manages these funds. With a small subsidy, this will land in Brazil at an average interest rate of 6%, plus the interest rate spread. The loans for the final firm, whoever's going to take the loans, is going to be something between 7 and 8%, which is a low rate by Brazilian standards. Remember that our base rate is currently expected to end this year at 11.75. And we have other initiatives, but I will stop here so we can have productive Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Very educational, very interesting presentation. Now I would like to invite Mr. Isaac Sutton to make his speech. Isaac, feel free the floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for Britcham for this invitation. I would like to introduce you to BH26. Let me share. Okay. I'd like to introduce you to BH26 and also to share some opportunities for foreign companies to invest in Brazil. I founded BH26 13 years ago. We are an investment bank boutique. And prior to that, I was the head of proprietary investments of Mr. Safra, who was at that time #1 Forbes list here in Brazil. My responsibility was around $2.5 billion in different stakes and companies. In BH26, one of our major areas of activity is M&As, and the experience of our team that has worked in outstanding transactions in Brazilian and international markets is the preponderant factor in obtaining already proven results. The process of evaluating the negotiation begins with an accurate analysis of the opportunity, with the purpose of allowing several strategic and valuation alternatives in the continuous search to maximize shareholder value. In this context, the coordination of negotiations is of a unique character. We consider as a below-profile approach, with absence of conflict of interest and exclusive focus on mandate. We have assisted many foreign groups in cross-border transactions in Brazil over the years. A second area of our activity is fundraising, and based on an analytical process of real financing needs coupled with a strategic assessment of the company, we propose individualized solutions in order to optimize the capital structure of our clients. The most important characteristics of our company in terms of fundraising are the independence and the global performance. The first, exclusive focus on financial advising, with exception to structure the best option between private equity, structured loan operations, IPO, and among others. And the second, with a differentiated alternative of financial structure, associated with a wide combination, Brazilian and international investors. I would like to highlight a very interesting opportunity for foreign companies in the fundraising here in Brazil in reais. From the moment that a foreign company establishes itself in Brazil, we see competitive funding sources in local currency for its in-country operation. In Brazil, domestic development banks also finance Brazilian subsidiaries of foreign groups in its investment within the country. This opens the opportunity for local long-term fundraising in local currency, in reais, and in a very competitive interest rates. BNDES, as we have here, Nelson Barbosa, is one of the largest development banks worldwide. FINEP, that's an agency from the government focused on projects associated with innovations, and local and regional development banks, Minas Gerais, São Paulo, Northeast, and in the South. That's a great opportunity for foreign companies to raise money in reais. A third area of our activities are strategic advisory. We advise clients on defining and implementing strategies that allow the best decision to reach their objectives. Because of the knowledge gained over the years in the Brazilian market, we offer customized and innovative solutions while challenging conventional thinking. With a holistic analytical view of the situation of our clients, we develop new solutions and explore opportunities to then generate shareholder value and sustainability to the business. We assist important foreign groups in strategic decisions to access the Brazilian market. Firstly, with an accurate analysis of the market and alternatives, and subsequently with follow-up on negotiation between companies. I would like to share here what are the major challenges for foreign companies and foreign investors when entering to Brazil. And there are several barriers to enter into the Brazilian market, among others. High important duties, excessive bureaucracy, the continental south of the country with different regions, and the language and the culture itself. Unlike banks that only offer many alternatives to those seeking to enter in the Brazilian market, we understand that this is just one of the alternatives among many. And through a market research and a deep analysis, we assist companies to decide the best approach in terms of time to market, which may include commercial agreements with Brazilian companies, product licensing, joint ventures, among others. We try to think always out of the box in what's the best approach for a foreign company to enter in Brazil. Natural resources is one of our major areas of activity. We have accumulated long-term experience in natural resources investment advisory, while advising domestic and foreign investors in strategy related to agribusiness, timberland, and carbon markets. Some of our experience during more than 20 years, we advise pulp and paper companies in Brazil who have been for more than 10 years, the local advisors of Hancock Natural Resources Group. Hancock is based in Boston and is the largest fund of timber worldwide, timber and agriculture, with more than $15 billion of assets under management. We have been the advisor of XP. XP is a local Brazilian bank, and the 9th largest asset manager for investments in natural resources. We advise also a land fund for Bunge in Brazil. And we are the only financial institution to participate in the board of PPA. PPA is a very interesting partnership platform for the Amazon as an initiative of the American government in Brazil. Talking about natural resources, for sure, we have to talk about the Amazon region. That's the richest biodiversity biome on the planet. It's recognized as the lung of the world. And preservation goes side by side with addressing the needs of poor local communities. Many companies use raw materials available in nature in the Amazon region, to develop sustainable projects. And as an example, we can mention Natura in the manufacture of cosmetics, Ambev in the production of soft drinks. And we have originated several opportunities for investment in the Amazon that favor the preservation and conservation of biodiversity together with attractive financial returns. Interesting to mention that we recently advised the first deal of the binding gov in the Amazon, a loan from the DFC to a medium-sized Brazilian bank to provide financial for small and medium-sized enterprises in the region. I'd like to share some, Mr. Nelson comment on this, but I would like to highlight the huge opportunities for foreign investments in Brazil in the next 3 to 7 years. During the first half of 2023, Brazil became the second recipient of direct foreign investment according to OECD. Government has recently put in place a huge investment program that will combine state and private investment in several industries in the next years. It's the Novo PAC. The expected investment is almost $350 billion in the period or next 3 to 7 years. 1/3 will be to sustainable and resilient cities. That is basically city mobility and sewage. 1/3 almost will be for energy transition that is renewables, and the other investments will be in transportation, defense industry, education, healthcare, digital inclusion, different opportunities for different companies. And the interesting point is that 1/3 of this total investment projected is expected to come from private capital. According to the World Bank, Brazil must invest almost $800 billion to bridge the infrastructure gap in the next 7 years. 50% of the Brazil investment gap is needed for transport. And here we have some figures that shows how important is our need for transport, for investment in transport. 24% of Brazil investment gap is needed for energy, 12% in water and sanitation. Only 66% have access to improved sanitation in Brazil. And 11% is needed for digital development. This shows how Brazil can be a very interesting opportunity for foreign investors in the short term. Here we have some of our recent accomplishments in cross-border transactions. And here are some of our domestic transactions. Here is part of our team. And I would like to thank again for the opportunity and at your total disposal for any questions.
Thank you very much, Isaac. It was a very interesting presentation. Actually, I'm very happy with both presentations. You provided a lot of information. Unfortunately, we have so little time to discuss everything that I was thinking about. But I'll try to start with a question to both of you regarding the strategic plan from BNDES to invest in several sectors and initiatives. And you also, with a compliment from you, Isaac, with the experience that you have in helping companies coming to Brazil. So, as Nelson said, there are some strategic sectors that are included in the growth acceleration plan. And if I'm wrong, Nelson, feel free to correct me, okay? So one of them is healthcare, is the investment in the healthcare complex, which I assume has to do with investments in pharmaceutical labs that was proved during the COVID pandemic that we lacked that a reliable, let's say, sector to to allow us not to depend so much on imports of strategic and critical drugs. The other one is the defense sector. Third one is sanitation, very interesting one. I would like to know a little bit more, if you could specify some of the details about the plans for each of these sectors, if you have any details that you can share with us.
I'll start here. Yes, on the healthcare, I would put healthcare and defense under the initiatives for innovation. I would say that our focus mostly on reforestation, innovation, urban development, and energy as a whole. So under innovation, because given what happened in COVID, and we invest a lot, we're in production of pharmaceuticals, special vaccines. We do some lending, but most of that is project structuring, and we are interested in investing direct capital, being a shareholder or through a private equity fund. BNDES usually does that through open calls. We do an open call for a fund for pharmaceutical products. And usually, by our regulation, we are not the main shareholder in any company, directly or indirectly. And what it usually goes as BNDES, say, putting 40%, some other institutions put the other 40%, and whoever is going to manage the fund, putting the remaining 20%. So this is usually an open call. There were some calls this year, the funds that were already created, and we are now devising what will be the next round of funds and what activities. One of that is specifically health services and products. So it has to do with pharmaceuticals, but also has to do with some possible PPPs in health services, especially hospitals, clinics, and this is a demand mostly from the government, from state governments and municipal governments. Defense is a little bit more nuanced because it has to do with the strategic policy from the government, which nominates what is the priority, and we check whether that's a public company or a private company, whether that can be done through financing, through BNDES, or through direct funds from the government. Water sanitation is booming because there are a lot of recent concessions, and the firms that won those concessions come to BNDES for part of their financing, especially long term. When they issue a 7-year bond, they usually do that through normal market conditions. Whenever I talk about 15 to 20-year bond, it's usually BNDES is involved. Otherwise, there's not going to be a bond in local currency. And there are other concessions that are in the pipeline for next year. Urban development is something that is starting to grow because many state governments and municipal governments want to fast track the transition to electrical vehicles in terms of buses, small trucks, and this is creating a huge demand for electrical buses in Brazil. And Brazil has a competitive bus industry still, manufacturing of buses, and there's going to be a growing demand. And this is an opportunity for investing in everything related to that, because it's not only the bus itself, but also the changes in the power grids to charge these vehicles faster, the batteries, the maintenance. So it's really a creative destruction in terms of urban transportation in Brazil that's going to happen fast during this decade. I would say by 2030, most of the Brazilian fleet of buses will be electrified or have been changed to VLTs, to subways, or something like that. So this is the main area of investment as well. And as I said, we are interested in co-financing or being partners with domestic and foreign investors in some small firms. We want to create national successes in terms of whatever sector, whatever that can happen.
Thank you, Nelson. Would you like to comment something, Isaac?
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Give a perfect overview and we are living a very special moment here in Brazil for foreign investors, and the huge opportunities that are coming in different sectors and different opportunities. And as I mentioned before, Brazil is very friendly as a country to offering local opportunities to raise money for foreign companies with long terms and very competitive interest rates.
Thank you. We at the British Chamber, we're kind of in a unique position since we receive many questions or interest from UK companies that are interested in investing in Brazil. We saw a significant rise in this interest, especially after the Brexit, and the UK needed to sign bilateral agreements with as many countries as possible. Brazil and UK signed a bilateral agreement last year. It's been rectified in the UK Parliament. We're waiting to be rectified in the Brazilian Congress here. In that sense, and we see a lot of companies that want to invest in the sectors we already mentioned and the others too. Do you see as like let's say as an attractive to invest in Brazil the possibility for Brazil to be a export hub for regional for the Latin American region? How do you see that this opportunity?
Oh, as I said, we already have a large exporter of aircraft, and that tends to continue. Embraer and other companies, everybody's in the race to develop the electrical vehicle, flying car, if you will. There's a lot of proposals around the world, and we have the EV in Brazil as well. I think the most potential that we see right now has to do, as I said, with the electrification of buses. 53% of all the buses that run in Latin America were produced in Brazil. So we compete a lot with other countries in that, mostly with the Chinese. But I think that's an opportunity for investment and integration in Latin America. And as I said, everything that is in the value chain of those vehicles. Huge opportunity to electrifying the cargo transport, the urban cargo transportation, which are those small trucks they're very common in Asia. In Brazil, they're also some cities are moving in that direction very fast. The healthcare industry, especially pharmaceuticals, Brazil has a long history of being competitive in that, in developing and producing at a low cost, and especially supplying South-South in the South-South trade. And being a developing world, we are also behind the digitalization of many businesses, but that can also be an opportunity to leapfrog and adopt some technologies and processes that are already common in developed economies, but are not that common in Brazil. What I want to say with that, there's still a huge investment opportunity in information and communication technology in Brazil. Digitalization of many businesses and public services, and this is already an opportunity. The other possible opportunity, something that everybody's going to the COP now, has to do with green development, especially carbon credits. Brazil can generate a huge amount of carbon credits depending on what will be the Brazilian regulation, the international agreement about that. The Brazilian government is defending that credits should be generated not only for the recovery of degraded lands, but also for the maintenance of existing forests. So this is a challenge economically and also political challenge because it requires an international agreement with that. And there's a huge potential to recover degraded areas, and we were going to start with that at the BNDES. Right now, we have already almost 1 billion reais to invest in the recovery of degraded lands starting next year, starting with federal land, mostly, doing concessions of national forests to have a sustainable use of those forests. And Congress is right now, is already passed in the Senate and is now in the chamber, a new regulation about emissions to create a Brazilian cap and trade system, which is going to be implemented in a gradual way, initially in a voluntary basis. But then I think from 2026 onwards, there will be some quotas. This will create a market. And most important, it will create a more reliable certifying system, which is the problem in this market all around the world. So I think in that area, there's a huge opportunity for investment, but we are still in that phase that is a mixed market. Depends a lot on regulations, international agreements, not only on the private solutions. We are working with both of them.
Thank you, Nelson. I don't know if you want to add something, Isaac.
Yeah, we have been participating in the PPA, that's a platform for the Amazon, together with some other large companies, and we have been dealing with some opportunities, especially in the Amazon, not just for carbon credits, but also for some other investments. We have been seeing many foreign companies interested to do projects in the Amazon that will conserve the biodiversity, also giving opportunity for poor communities there. Going to your first point about Brazil and UK companies, we have been seeing that Brazil, especially in this government that is incentivizing the Mercosul, Brazil can be the hub for UK companies that want to expand all their opportunities in the Mercosul, in the Latin America region. That's a great opportunity to be here, and because of the size of the country, Brazil offers different opportunities, and then to expand for the whole Latin America.
Thank you. It's very good to hear that. One of the topics that are very dear to the UK government is the environment. So the UK is putting a lot of attention in the next steps that Brazil will take in order to migrate to green economy and to take the correct steps in order to preserve the environment that we have. Do you have any specific examples besides the ones that Nelson already mentioned, or specific cases that you could tell to the audience?
I think that's for you, Isaac.
Oh, thank you. What we have seen was the last emission of the Brazilian government, a green bond that was a success in the market. And what we have been seeing is some companies there in the Brazilian market are in those days looking for the emission of green bonds. That's a market that is growing a lot. We see a lot of opportunities for local companies to issue green bonds.
Thank you,
on my side, two things that I did not mention, but because right now there's a lot of talk but not clear scenarios. One is sustainable aviation fuel. We have some domestic production, but it's still a niche, but it can be increased in a huge scale. So if you want to produce sustainable aviation fuel, and everybody will have to produce that because the plants have to come in and go out. Brazil is a major competitor in that, and we have all this fuzz and discussion about green hydrogen all around the world. In terms of production costs, Brazil has one of the lowest production costs of green hydrogen in the world, because we have most of our power matrix comes from sustainable sources, hydropower, wind farms, photovoltaic plants. And so we can produce green hydrogen at a very competitive rate. And we are now seeing whether there's demand for that. So if you find the world demand for green hydrogen, Brazil will be one of the most competitive places to produce it.
Thank you both, Isaac and Nelson. Now I'm gonna ask some questions that were asked by the audience. First one is someone that asks us if BNDES would lend to a Brazilian subsidiary of a UK company, and the person says that it's my understanding that BNDES only lend to companies in Brazil with Brazilian ownership. I think you already mentioned something about that, right, Isaac?
Yes. If a foreign company is established in Brazil, they are allowed to raise capital, raise funds in BNDES, in FINEP, and other development banks here. There is no problem. It's treated exactly a local Brazilian company.
Yeah, it has to be a resident company. It doesn't have to be a national company. If it's a resident in Brazil, a subsidiary of an automaker in Brazil receives financing from BNDES. No matter what the origin of capital is, if it's a resident, it can receive.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me ask you a follow-up question based on the first one. Let's say that a UK company invests in Brazil, and they would like to use some financing lines from the UK Export, which is a development bank from UK, for guarantees in order to reduce the spreads. Is this kind of operation possible?
Yes, we can have guarantees from foreign sources, and have to see how's the regulation. They'll probably, if it's a domestic operation, they'll have to have a counterpart here, or BNDES can offer the guarantee itself, having the guarantee from the British source, or as any other private bank can do that. But if it's an operation in the Brazilian market by Brazilian regulation, I believe from the central bank regulation, that must be a counterpart for that. If it's a foreign operation, if you're financing exports and all that, that's all done internationally. But if it's domestic, it can be done using a Brazilian counterpart, and there are many possible institutions to do that.
So you probably mean that you use like a private bank, like a trade finance department from private bank. Okay, got it. Thank you. I have another question here from another person who's watching the webinar. The person asks, how do you see the possibility of developing carbon credits projects, not only in the Amazon, but in all sectors?
I think they're very promising. I think yes, we are aiming in the Amazon because, as I said, for the Brazilian government, for the Brazilian people, is the main source of emissions. But from wherever they come, they're welcome. There are huge potential also, as I say, by electrifying the urban transportation in Brazil, you generate a lot of carbon credits as well. By promoting integrated distributed systems of power generation using photovoltaic plants or panels, you're going to create a lot of carbon credits as well. Well, there's a huge potential in urban transformation as well. And I think that's where most of the credits will be generated in the short run, because there's this whole global debate about how you remunerate the maintenance of forests, which involves not only Brazil, but also African countries, Indonesia, and other countries. We hope that that's going to progress very fast. But regarding carbon credits for reducing emissions from industrial production, from city activities, the debate is not that complex. The question there is to have a proper certifying institution, and then the market will probably boom. As just to mention, Brazil is a large country. most of the deforestation is happening in the Amazon and in the Cerrado region. But the opportunities for reforestation are not only there. Huge part of that is also in the southeast and in the south, in the what we call the Atlantic forest, the tropical forest of Brazil.
And to Nelson, we see the huge potential also for Brazil is a capture of carbon, especially in degraded areas. Those are the carbon credits that are that have been sold in a higher price. When you capture and you have a degraded area, you plant a new forest and you preserve this forest. Those are the best projects, and Brazil has a huge potential for that. As Nelson mentioned, not just Amazonia, also the Cerrado is a very important area for those kinds of projects. The question is always the additionality. In case of the degraded area, you have a huge opportunity because of some of the land in Cerrado.
Thank you. Nelson, you mentioned about the necessity of certifying agencies or institutions in order to promote or to facilitate the carbon credit, especially in urban areas. Do we see any developments in this particular activity?
The bill that is discussed in Congress, one part of that is exactly that. Once you establish quotas, who is going to guarantee that you emitted less or more of that? Is there going to be a government institution, or that's going to be leased by the government to private institutions? And this is something under discussion. In Brazil, as I know, probably in the UK, you also have that. We do that a lot for energy efficiency. Let's say for cars, for household appliance, we have Inmetro, which is a government institution that certifies whether that appliance or that car is efficient or not. It consumes less power, it emits less CO2, and you have a seal that says that. And this is something. This is not new for government activities. The question is really now is to certify the quality of the carbon credit. There are some carbon credits that are traded by $70 a ton. There are other carbon credits that are traded by $5 a ton. So it's not like it's not a commodity. It's actually have high grade, high quality, low quality, middle quality, and the system is still evolving. I think that nobody's gonna have the right certification methodology from the start, but this is something where many activities or many solutions should be tried until we converge together with the rest of the world to a proper system to have this world market. And right now, this is being discussed, and then until we don't have a regulation, this is done usually through market institutions, which generates this huge spread between the same price for a ton of emissions avoided.
From the perspective of the buyers of the carbon credits, normally, and they are looking for the global certifiers like Verra, that is a recognized brand in terms of certifying. What I understand is that Brazil is moving to try to have also these certifications approved. The key point here is how those potential buyers will receive these certifications doing in Brazil. We hope that they will be fully accepted as Verra today is accepted worldwide.
There's one last question here. I think Isaac will be very happy with that, which is what would be the best way to engage with BNDES? Can BH26 facilitate this and provide general advice to the process? So I think this is to you, Isaac.
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
So the question is, what would be the best way to engage with BNDES? Can BH26 facilitate this and provide general advice on the process?
Yes, exactly. This is exactly what we do. We normally discuss with the company, we analyze the company and the potentiality, and then we discuss what's the best way to fund, to look for fundraising with BNDES or with some other government agencies. As I mentioned before, when you are looking for specifically for innovation, you have FINEP. But normally what we do, we analyze the company, analyze the needs, and then we discuss with BNDES the best lines of credit that are available for the company.
And Nelson, I think BNDES has offices in UK and other countries, right? I don't know if these offices are set up in order to interact with the investors, or could you elaborate a little bit more on those operations?
The BNDES had an office in the UK, I believe, during the Dilma administration, but that was closed during either the Temer or Bolsonaro administration, I don't recall. Right now, have offices only in Brazil, where our headquarters are in Rio, but have offices in São Paulo, Recife, and Brasilia. But in today's world, you can reach us through the internet. You can have these kinds of meetings, and if somebody is interested in knowing better what are the financing and investment opportunities in BNDES, they can also contact us. We have our institutional relation department that can provide the menu of products and opportunities. And also, as I said, we have these open calls for joint investments that we do from ourselves, or we do with if somebody presents a good opportunity that wants BNDES to be part of it, we can organize these open calls for other investors to join in as well. But for those listening, if you have any doubts, questions, or if you have opportunities that you would like to present to BNDES, you can also do that through us. You can contact me or my office, and we work with, as Isaac said, with many agencies structuring these projects.
All right. Well, I think we are reaching the final hour here. I would like to thank Nelson Barbosa and Isaac Sutton for the participation and for the insights. I would like to thank the audience here, and I would like to thank especially the UK government and their representatives in Brazil, which is the DBT. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.